Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Crime Talk. My name is Scott Reich. Thanks for joining us. I guess this is officially our Thanksgiving show for 2023 because it is Tuesday, the 21st, before Thanksgiving. So welcome. I hope you all have a wonderful holiday coming up and that you are able to spend it with whether it's friends or family or both, that you have a wonderful, wonderful holiday. So thanks for joining us. I appreciate you all being here. I know you have lots of things that you could be doing, but you chose to join it with us. So hopefully we're going to give you something that is worthwhile to talk about. And I think we have some good things to talk about. Now, there was some news yesterday that came out of the Bryan Kohberger matter, and that is discussed in yesterday's show, but we'll talk about that as well, because I believe that we, the public, the people that want to know what's going on in the Bryan Kohberger case, are the ones that won as it relates to the court's order allowing cameras in the courtroom, not the press's cameras, not photography from the press, but the court is going to use their own YouTube channel so that we, the public, can see what the heck is taking place. And I say that we won because the court obviously was balancing the choices that the court had to make as it relates to making sure Bryan Kohberger got a fair trial, but also that the public has a right to know what's going on in the courtrooms that are taking place, to see if the defendant, is he getting railroaded? Is he getting a fair trial? Is he receiving competent counsel? Is the prosecutor competent? Do they have enough evidence to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt? The prosecutors, that is. Obviously, the defense never has to prove themselves innocent. The prosecution always has the burden. So when the judge in the Bryan Kohberger matter said, I'm not, every time I've let the press do something, they've screwed it up. But the public has a right to know, so I'll just do it myself. I will have a court person, a court camera person, do the video production that's going to take place, and we'll just put it up on our YouTube channel so the world can watch contemporaneously as things are going on. I can live with that. I think that was a victory for the people in this particular case. Can't really say First Amendment, I guess, but the court basically says, hey, we can balance the right to a fair trial and making it available to the public for everybody to see. And that's what the court had to do. And everyone kept saying, there's no cameras in the courtroom. I was looking at some of the stories. I'm like, did you all read the story all the way? Did you guys actually read the order or not? Some of the stories got it all wrong, but I think that it was a victory for us, the people, so we can watch that. So hats off to the judge in the Bryan Kohberger case. We can talk more about that as well. But speaking of lots of people getting a story that, man, they really need to read the whole transcript. And the story that I'm talking about is the case as it relates to the Delphi homicide case, where the defendant, Richard Allen, has been accused of 2 counts of murder. And anyone who's been following the case, and I told you, you can go back and take a look. I said, this is going to get good. And I said, what I really want to be able to see is the transcript from the in-chambers proceedings that took place. And so when Judge Gull basically fired the attorneys for Richard Allen and appointed new attorneys, there was an in-camera, in-chambers meeting, and that took place on October 19th of 2023. Judge Gull filed Bradley Rossi, I believe it's pronounced Rossi, even though it's a ZZ, Bradley Rossi and Andrew Baldwin, who are appointed to represent Mr. Allen in this particular case. And I said, something's not right. Something is a little off to me because in my years of practicing criminal defense, which in just a couple of more weeks will be right at going into 29 years. That's a long time. And I think I've seen a lot, but I've never seen this, what took place. And I believe that it is worth basically going through it line by line because I believe, I think the judge is the one that made the mistake here. I really do. And as we go through it, I'll talk about it, but I'll try to keep it to the transcript itself. It's not particularly that long of a transcript, and I think it'll go by rather quickly. But you can see sometimes in chambers where people get a little relaxed and, sometimes maybe they don't recall that they're on the record, so to speak. So with your permission, we will do this. I'm just looking here at the chats here. Now, remember, we don't ask for super chats, and I'm going to go through this and then we can do it. But I see one that says, will your firm represent in self-defense situations? Yes. Do you offer a 24-hour hotline for immediate representation? Leo, call the office tomorrow, and we'll try to see if we can help you out. We do cases across the country, but you still have to hire local counsel. So remember, it's going to be expensive. Just to give you all the heads up there, because you're basically paying for 2 attorneys. All right. So Leo, hopefully that answers your question there. Yeah. In fact, we just won a homicide case, self-defense case. Now, cannot guarantee future results of a specific case because each case is different. But past performance is indicative of future results. If you're winning, sometimes it just depends on the facts. Each case is different. You got to remember that. All right. So let's do this. This is the transcript from the in-chambers hearing on October 19th of 2023 in the Richard Allen case. Now, Richard Allen is not here, and the official transcript was prepared in this particular case by Jody Williams, who is the court reporter. We had the Honorable Francis C. Gull. Get it? Francis C. Gull. And we had from the prosecutor's office, Nicholas McClelland and James Luttrell from the Carroll County prosecutor and deputy prosecutor, Bradley Rossi and Andrew Baldwin, who were appointed to represent. So the proceedings begin. Attorney Nicholas McClelland, judge, I want to do some instructions. I finally got approval from our counsel to hire a paid attorney to help me. The court, okay. McClelland, small town, local governments. So this is Jim Luttrell. He's a retired prosecutor from Grant County. He decided or agreed to come on board. The court, okay, have a seat. McClelland, he signed the oath to my office. The court, okay. McClelland, and all that. I'm going to handle a written appearance. James Luttrell, nice to meet you, Judge. The court, nice to meet you, Jim. McClelland, next week. The court, okay, Mr. McClelland, or maybe tomorrow, if I have time. Judge, if I get it done. The court, okay, but he will be entered in, and we're trying to get him up to speed. The court, okay, very good. Attorney Bradley Rossi. Well, I'm the one that kind of asked to huddle up. So if you want me to lead or if you want to say something, I'm okay with whatever approach you want to take here. The court, go ahead. Mr. Rossi, well, I think the court, I've got your portable FTR going just so that Mr. Rossi, okay, that's fine. The court got a record. Mr. Rossi, obviously I'm happy to hear that the court's going to make some decisions on this pending pleading today. Little does he know what's coming, okay? Little does he know. The court then responds in the affirmative. Mr. Rossi, I assume Andy feels the same way. It's time to kind of get us some closure, if you will, with regard to those items so that we can move forward. It's probably obvious that the tension from outside is coming, from the words disqualification that were murmured in the phone conference that we had a couple of weeks ago. I mean, I'm assuming you understand how that kind of raises the intensity level of the circumstances. And I guess if I have a concern today, it's that we're going to go out on that kind of in the public, so to speak, in the courtroom on the record and have a discussion about an ongoing investigation. And that's kind of garnered from the email, I think you invited Nick to talk about that if he wanted to. The court, Mr. Rossi. And it makes me a little uncomfortable because I don't know. First of all, there are no pleadings that are pending, whether they're motions to disqualify or contempt citations or whatever they might be, that really frame any of the issues. And I have no problem. I mean, I don't have any problem talking about the issues, or I'm sorry, I don't have any problem talking about this stuff privately on the record in an ex parte type confidential hearing. I just think it's a little difficult to expect that there will be any kind of structure to the idea, hey, there's an ongoing investigation and just tell us what's going on. And I don't know what that has any relevance to what we're really trying to accomplish today. And I also don't know why Nick would want to talk about an ongoing investigation in public, knowing that in itself could be a little damaging to their circumstances. And so we're lawyers. We're used to having issues framed. We're used to having an opportunity to prepare. And I don't have anything to hide. And I know he doesn't have anything to hide. You've maybe gathered that we've cooperated. We ran into the state police posts, our respective posts, if you will. And I had somebody advise me of my rights, and I waived those. And I gave a formal statement. He did the same. And I'm sure that we're going to benefit, or that this will be productive to just open the floor to this. And that's my biggest concern today. The court. Mr. Attorney Baldwin. I'm more of like the due process side. I'm not really sure what will happen, but I just don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. And I would like the opportunity to know that's going to happen and prepare for their claiming or whatever before it happens. And I don't want to say ambush, but it's just hard to know for me what to do when I don't know what's happening. There's not a pleading. We can respond to things like that. So, you had indicated that you knew when Nick said, I don't know if he said the words disqualification. The court. Oh, he did. Mr. Baldwin, was that the word? The court. Mr. Baldwin. Okay. I don't know if he just said it in a more generic way. The court. Negative response. Mr. Baldwin. And your response was, I'm leaning in that direction or something along those lines. The court. Affirmative response. Mr. Baldwin again. And so that's, a cause of concern. I mean, we're still wanting to try this case in January, and I'm willing to. We made changes at my office that will prevent this from ever happening again, and we can take directives from the court. We can, we're looking down every single thing on Delphi. It's in a dedicated room. We put locks on our conference room, on our war room where this guy went. My friend went in and did this without my knowledge, and that no document, whether it's benign or something super, like a crime scene photo, is ever going to be left alone for a single solitary second ever again. So, I'm hoping that can be something that the court, can say, all right, that's fine. And then let's go on with the trial. But I'll shut up now. The court. Anything, Nick? McClellan. Judge, I guess my plan today was give the court a summary of the investigation. I've got witnesses here and exhibits to present that go towards the investigation. I'm more than happy to hand those over to the defense. I know it may harm the investigation, but I think it would be important that the court hears these things. I guess the heart of the investigation, I think, is important. I think the importance of you hearing it is outweighed by that. And so I have those things. I'm concerned that the leak is not just a one-time leak. The evidence that we have shows it's an ongoing leak. However, it's been done, and it's just what's next. I have an issue. What's next? I mean, I spent the last 17 days investigating this night and day when I should have been focused on preparing for trial. And when I say night and day, I mean calls at 2 a.m., 3:30 a.m., night and day. And that's where I'm at, Judge. Again, I'm an officer of the court. I'm reporting to the court what I know, and that's kind of where I see my role. The court, okay? Mr. Rossi, you know, this is starting to scream due process to me. I haven't seen any of those exhibits, and I don't know really, frankly, I don't know anything about any of this. And I'm not distancing myself from Mr. Baldwin. I'm just saying I have no connection with any of these people, okay? And the idea that somehow the prosecutor is going to get to roll out a bunch of statements and exhibits and, testimony without us having any forewarning or any idea, any way of scrutinizing that seems a little outside the boundaries of due process for me. Plus, again, I get back to what is the relevance of what is going on in this case. Why we are going to open the courtroom to air an ancillary matter. It's not really connected in any way at this point to the proceedings that are going on, whether it's the Franks issue or anything of this nature. I will tell you this, and I am prepared to show the court this. I would rather do it in private. This problem has been a problem from the very beginning. I have 10 pages of deposition transcripts in this file from my deposition, our deposition that I took of Trooper Holman in this case. And in that deposition, he talks openly about how there were crime scene links from the very beginning, unequivocal crime scene leaks, and that as soon as this crime occurred, they were investigating information that had been released because there were lay people that were part of the search party. And the implication is, and I've got the transcript, is that those people that found those girls started to essentially disseminate or distribute information, and law enforcement essentially tried to catch up with them, but it was really too late. And as you might expect, once it gets into the hands of the public, it's too late. So he told us that, almost volunteered that information to me in the deposition. The second concern I have is that I think I shared with the court, just as an example, a week or two ago, somebody sends me a court TV, bit, and I can assure you, I've never watched one of those bits on this case. I don't even know if I've ever really watched court TV. Maybe back when Simpson was ongoing, I don't know. And in that bit, Barbara McDonald is talking 2 different occasions that she mentioned how she's getting information from investigators on the ground that were at the crime scene. Now we can all draw implications about that, but most importantly, it was corroborated by the fact that she was holding in her hand documents that I know to be directly related to the Purdue report. I mean, I saw the pictures. I know where those came from. And if you know, the point here is I'm going to say this maybe a little loosely, but forgive me, I don't care. I don't care that all this stuff is out there because it's been out there for 5 or 6 years. I don't have time. He doesn't have time. He doesn't have time to sit and try to marshal all of this stuff while this case is ongoing because there's no end to it. But the point is, the court needs to have some context that this is nothing new. I lost sleep over the fact that there's a man who's dead that I don't even know. And frankly, Andy doesn't know. And it's tragic. I don't know what life circumstances he had or what surrounded this. None of that information has been shared with us. But at the end of the day, what's going on here in the cyber world and in the public, as you might expect in a case of this magnitude that has been publicized for 6 years, was beyond our control before we even got involved. Mr. Baldwin. There's even a guy in Florida who says the guy in Texas who leaked all this stuff has received from a disgruntled Carroll County employee a whole file filled with stuff and photos included. And I haven't even seen the photos that were leaked. I don't know what they are, I mean, if this could be set for a formal hearing in the future where we could have a chance to do it the right way, that's one thing. But to go in there and we don't have any way to counteract anything, if I know what it is, I can. Oh, okay. I know that's what it is, and I don't know what that is. And it's, and in the meantime, I don't know. This is the lowest point of my career right now because somebody did what they did to me. And has nothing to do with Richard Allen. The court, it certainly does not. Mr. Baldwin, Richard Allen needs to have counsel there. So I don't want to just go in there and not be able to fight back with evidence that we are witnesses that we have to counteract whatever they claim they have. So, all right, the court. This is from the court now, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, here's my thoughts in no particular order. I don't know how many folks are out there, and I certainly don't wish to air publicly to the world the concerns that I have about this matter. My intent in having this hearing was to go through some of the pleadings that we have not yet decided. So I was going to start with reminding everybody about the decorum order, reminding everybody why we're here, to shut up, etc. There have been reports to my sheriff about disruptive people, and I will remind people if they are disruptive, they will be removed. And my sheriff is fully prepared to execute arrests if necessary, because I know we've seen in other hearings people have been disruptive and hateful. So under these rules, under the canons of judicial conduct, I'm required to advise people within the room that the media is here and they are filming. They're doing pool coverage. So there's only 2 cameras in the courtroom and everybody is going to get coverage from that. And then I want to talk about the pleadings. Defendant filed a verified motion for immediate transfer of custody. The state filed its response. The motion, again, has a lot of inaccuracies and some speculation. And it has been refuted ably by the affidavits that have been submitted by the state. And I'm going to deny the motion. The defendant then filed a motion for broadcasting order. The state filed its response. Your motion's overbroad. It's got a lot of irrelevant verbiage in it, and I'm required to consider individual requests for hearing. So I will. And if the media wishes to have an individual request submitted, they know fully well how to do that. And I provided to counsel all of those requests that I've gotten so far from the hearing. So if you want to file them for a particular hearing, you're certainly welcome to do that. But the media is all over this, and they know how to do this. Mr. Rossi, yeah, I was just trying to understand, are you suggesting that you're going to determine that on a case-by-case basis or a hearing-by-hearing basis? The court, hearing by hearing. Mr. Rossi, okay, the court, yeah. Mr. Rossi, all right. I just wanted to make sure I understood that. The court, again, Judge Francis C. Gall. The state filed its motion for leave of court to subpoena the third-party records. I think that was directed again to DOC. I clearly can't grant that. I'm going to grant the defendant's motion to quash. But if you continue to raise his medical and mental health and pleadings, that's fair game then for them to provide that to the state. You have also filed, Mr. McClellan, a motion for future pleadings and filings to be sealed prior to being released to the public. I've not gotten a response from the defense. Mr. Rossi, can I speak on that? The court, sure. Mr. Rossi, I think it's important to note that, we had this discussion come up before there was basically, we decided, okay, we're done sealing stuff. We're going to make it public. I had, before we filed that Frank's brief, I had a long conversation with the court reporter, Karen Allen, over in Delphi, because I wasn't sure about Allen or Roller. I always want to call her Karen McClellan Allen. Mr. Rossi, Karen Allen, because I wasn't sure about the mechanics on how all this stuff was moving from Delphi to your office. And I know that you had set up some kind of website or something that people could access. And I was under the understanding, in speaking with Miss Allen, I'm not blaming her for anything, but that when we file these things, they were going from them and they were hitting a button. We were filing with Carroll County. They were hitting enter and they were sending it to you and you were essentially filtering this stuff, or at least you were seeing it before it became public. The court, nope, Mr. Rossi. And so that's the way, in a talking with her, that the way I understood the mechanics, which I think is what happened to a pleading the other day, from what I understand. We filed something and you either put it in a queue. I think anyway, I tried to do some homework on that, and that was it. Mr. Baldwin, I was a part of one of those conversations, and that's what she said, the court. So does that need a hearing? I'm happy to have a hearing on that. I don't have a problem with that. Mr. Rossi, well, I don't really, I guess I'm just telling you for context, Mr. Baldwin, I mean, could there be a happy medium of we file it confidentially and then the judge then gets a chance to review it first? Because that's what we thought was going on anyway, but that's not what's going on. The court, no, it's being filed confidentially if you mark it as such. Mr. Baldwin, I know. Yeah, I know that now. The court, I had my staff mark the memorandum confidential after it had been filed and disseminated to the public because the actual warrant was in there. And that's covered under the miscellaneous cause number. I'm happy to have a hearing. Mr. Rossi, well, what's your ruling? I guess to make sure I understand, I don't want to fight about something that we don't need to argue about. The court, I've ruled on that. Mr. Rossi, okay. The court, you haven't filed a response. And that, Mr. Rossi, yeah. The court, my question is, do we need a hearing on that, or do you wish to file a response? The Franks motion clearly needs a ruling, and I'm working on that. The motion and exhibits are about 1,500 pages, and there are hours and hours of interviews that have been made available that my IT staff has now cleaned to make sure they're okay. We already talked about that. And then, that brings us to my concerns that I have raised with all of you on the phone. And I write everything out. And this is what I intend to say in open court. I have concerns regarding the defense team and the totality of the circumstances surrounding your representation of Mr. Allen. Candidly, my concerns began at our hearing on November 22nd of last year. Mr. McClellan filed a motion for gag order, and we were in chambers, and you assured me, gentlemen, we don't want the media in our lives. We will not try this case in the media. And less than 2 weeks later, you issued an undated press release that contained an awful lot of information that would not normally be revealed. I don't know. I think you knew or should have known there were potentially violations of Rule 3.6 of the Rules of Professional Responsibility. But is that press release that prompted me to issue the order of December 2nd, granting the gag order until the further hearing. April 18th of this year, you filed a notice of tort claim against the Department of Corrections. You stated in that notice that it was your intent to pursue our client's claims against you. The full amount of damages sought on behalf of my client is unknown. I don't know how you could do that and represent Mr. Allen in a criminal matter and then launch off into a civil matter. I think that's inappropriate. That's interesting because I don't think so. Anyway, May of this year, you were notified by the state of Brandon Woodhouse's arrest and the subsequent discovery of your work product. And I think it was an outline that you created for yourselves with the discovery. It was pretty detailed. I don't know if that's the right word. That apparently happened in December of last year, and that was not revealed to anybody, not shared with the court. It wasn't shared with you, although apparently you guys knew about what was going on. Mr. Baldwin, he didn't know. The court, you knew. Mr. Baldwin, I did know. The court. So then Mr. Woodhouse gets arrested, and here we are, grossly negligent to email that was to the wrong Brad. Your pleading on the safekeeping order contained inaccuracies and falsehoods. That was proven in the hearing we conducted in June. The evidence presented by the state clearly demonstrated the falsity of your claims, and that was very troubling to me. And then the last couple of weeks that we've been dealing with, the state provided you discovery that has been severely compromised. We now have an ongoing investigation. I'm not going to call it a criminal investigation. I don't know what it is, but it's clearly being investigated by the state of Indiana. Everybody involved has sought counsel, including you, Mr. Baldwin. You had an attorney enter a written appearance this morning. I don't want to get into the investigation candidly. You are the constitutional authority for the state of Indiana. If you choose to pursue it, that is up to you. If you choose to abandon it, that is clearly up to you. I'm glad to hear that you've cooperated, but Mr. Baldwin's attorney has clearly shared. I don't know if you've seen his pleading. Mr. McClellan, I saw it, Judge. Yes, I got it kind of late. He emailed us and then the court. Okay. Mr. McClellan, I saw that was filed on the way here. The court. Well, yeah, so clearly he shared in his pleading down to the fact that an individual has committed suicide. He included the fact that you left materials all over a conference room table, accessible to anyone. And this is a friend of yours who apparently you have consulted with on this case. So again, it's up to you if you wish to pursue that. I'm looking at the totality of the circumstances. You know, when I look at a suppression, the case law requires me to look at the totality of the circumstances. And that's what I'm doing. And it pains me to say this, but the totality of the circumstances demonstrates gross negligence and incompetence on the part of the defense team. I am unsatisfied with your representation of Mr. Allen. I am gravely concerned about his rights to have competent, non-negligent representation. He currently doesn't have that right now because what you have demonstrated is negligence and incompetence. Now, I'm sharing my thoughts with you privately. I don't want to say this in open court. I would encourage you to talk privately about what you wish to do. I don't think this coming out is not where we need to be with this case, but I will. But you don't know that. You have just now been made aware of my concerns and where I'm landing. So if you wish to have a private conversation, I would encourage you to do that. I don't believe your client is in there yet. No, he's not. Clearly, you'll need to speak with him as well. So, Mr. Baldwin, I'm not good at reading between the lines. The court, you're a lawyer. That's what you do for a living. Mr. Baldwin, when you say have a private conversation, are you talking the four of us? The court, I'm talking about you. I'm not accusing the state of gross incompetence and negligence. I'm finding gross incompetence and negligence with you. Mr. Baldwin, okay. So, Mr. Rossi, forgive me. Go ahead. Mr. Baldwin, no. Mr. Rossi, I mean, obviously, reading the tea leaves here, what you're giving us a chance to do is to bow out gracefully, if you will, if that's the right term. If there's a scenario where the court would accept if I stayed on the case, I mean, I'm a team player, and I'm not the kind of guy that just bails out on somebody just for the sake of doing it. But I think it's obvious that he can speak differently, but I'm not as connected to some of this most recent circumstance as he is. Mr. Allen is in a situation where he's going to have counsel that's, if he's a new counsel, it's going to take them a year to get up to speed with the depth of information that continues to come in. And so I think that his Sixth Amendment right matters. And I'm probably the one that can at least move things forward with some sense of judicial economy. I don't like it, and that's not what I intend to do when I came in here today, but that would be kind of the worst case scenario on our side. I guess. And so is that the option the court will entertain? The court, no, Mr. Rossi. So basically what you're saying is you guys either quit on your own accord or you make me fire you. That's what the court, no, I'm saying to you that this is what I plan to say in court on the record when we convene at 2:00. Mr. Rossi, well, so in the culmination of that, you're removing us from the case, the court. I will, based upon what I've just shared with you. Mr. Rossi, okay, well, I just want to make sure we're the court. And I'm just giving you the opportunity to have a conversation, how do you want that to go? I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this, but I will if I have to. Mr. Baldwin, should we bow out gracefully? As Brad says, how would we even have a hearing? How would that go? Because if we're out of the case, then Mr. Rossi, well, then you're going to go ahead and rule on a bunch of stuff without lawyers in the room? That's the court. No, I would not do that. If you decide that your best course of action is to file a motion to withdraw, you can do that today, and I'll send Mr. Allen back to the DOC after you've had a chance to speak with him. Mr. Baldwin, would that happen before the hearing or after the hearing? The court, your motion to withdraw would happen before the hearing. Okay, that's what I wanted. Yeah, the court. Yeah, because he has rights, and I don't want those rights compromised by having a hearing with him not having a counsel. I assume if you choose to withdraw, that his financial situation hasn't changed and he would still be entitled to court-appointed counsel. I can't imagine that he has ability at this point to hire counsel. I don't know that. Mr. Baldwin, Brad and I need to go talk. The court, yes, you do. Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. McClellan, yep. Thank you, Judge. The court, thank you, Jody, court reporter. You're welcome. The court, okay, yes, Mr. Rossi. All right. So obviously, we're kind of trying to figure out how to address this issue with very short notice, very little notice. The first thing we really want to do is talk with the client, the court. Mr. Rossi, our client is a big part of this, the biggest part of this, and he has communicated to us that he does not want us to withdraw from this case. He wants us to continue with his representation. He understands, I think, that he's not the gatekeeper, or he doesn't have the authority to really force the court to do that. He will like to say that on the record. We asked him that that's what he wants to do. We suggested maybe he would do it in chambers. It seems a little bit of a difficult position to put a man who's accused but not been found guilty, to put him in a courtroom and have him, have to speak in these circumstances with 15 minutes notice. And I'm going to speak for myself. I'll let him speak for himself. I'm going to file a motion to withdraw. I don't want to do it, but I don't think I have a choice at this point. The options I've been given without notice, any notice by the court, really are either I withdraw or I'm going to be publicly shamed, and that's the way I see it. And I think the public shaming is there's not only a professional element to that, I think there's a personal aspect of that too. But when the media is teed up like this, and we show up here today and the court's having told us that we're going to conduct some business that somehow bleeds over into a forced resignation or whatever you want to, however you characterize this, I don't feel like I have any other choice professionally. I have a life beyond this courtroom and beyond this case, and I have a family too. I have a law practice. But I think we'd been given some notice that we were actually, if this would have been framed in a pleading format or some formal disciplinary claim where there's a process for that in our business, then we could have come in here today and had an opportunity to refute some of those things that you clearly had, thought and prepared before we got here. And we didn't have the opportunity. And I think that's the idea that I've come in here in an open courtroom and essentially defend myself against claims that I don't agree with without any notice and without any opportunity I think is unfair. But I also have some common sense. And, me going in there and standing my ground because my client wants me is just going to make things worse for him. So I'm going to withdraw my appearance. I'm going to walk out there. I'm going to go down to my car. I'm going to go call my staff. I'm going to have them prepare a motion, and I'm going to withdraw my appearance. But I'm doing it because I don't think I have other choice professionally, not because I want to, and not because my client wants me to. And I respect the court has an opinion, but we're professionals and we can disagree. The court, of course, Mr. Rossi. And I'm extremely, I'd say frustrated, probably a soft word, with the idea that we showed up here today without any real opportunity to prepare for any of this. And I just think it's improper. And that's where I am with my position. The court, well, I think we talked about it. When you asked for a disqualification, and I indicated on the phone conversation, I'm inclined to do that. Mr. Rossi, it was a phone conversation that was not on the record. And then some follow-up emails. The court, true, Mr. Rossi, that's an informality to that. The court, true, Mr. Rossi. And you also said that you hadn't even done any research and you hadn't, had time to talk to your senior judge and all those other things. And he hasn't filed a pleading with the court either. The court, nope, I'm not doing this on my motion. Mr. Rossi, and I'm a lawyer who practices in lots of courtrooms, and I've been through some disqualifications actions. In 20 years, I've never had a disciplinary complaint in my life that's been confirmed, if you will. But I've seen lawyers disqualified, and there's a process for that, and it's not this. With all due respect, where you walk into somebody's office, a judge's office, and they read a prepared statement to you, and essentially that statement is an indictment on my professional, activities, that you're handed essentially a sheet of paper with two options, and one of those is I'm going to go out here and shame you, or you can quit. You can understand how upset that would make any lawyer. And I don't think that's the right way to handle this from a due process standpoint. So I have no choice but to, withdraw my appearance, because I'm not going to go in there and take a public shaming without having notice of it. That's where I am with this, Mr. Baldwin. I'm the same, withdrawing. I mirror what he said. I do appreciate giving us the advance notice. If there is some appreciation for that, I do appreciate that. But beyond that, I want to take this, and finish it out. I'm stunned. I don't know what to say. So I'll just say I'm moving to withdraw orally. Okay. Is the court going to generate some further instruction on what to do with all the discovery that we've had? The court, I already have, Mr. Rossi, all of this information. The court, there's an order. I granted the state's protective order on discovery. Mr. Rossi, no, I'm talking about my possession of all of this information. And am I to take it to the trash can? Am I supposed to wait for another attorney? Is the court going to give us some guidance on how to remove all this information from our law office? The court, I did. Mr. Rossi, to another? When I granted the state's protective order, I think the last paragraph of the protective order directs you to return it all to the state of Indiana. All the copies, all the whatever you gave them, they are required under that order to return to. Mr. Rossi, at the conclusion of the case, the court, or your representation. Mr. Rossi, I know what order you're talking about. I read the order before I came today. Okay. Mr. Rossi, so we're supposed to just take everything back, give it to the state, and then just retain our work product until somebody asks for it? The court, your work product is your work product. I would hope that you would share it with your successor counsel. I would hope that you would help your successor counsel just with a transfer of all the information, because that's in your client's best interest to do that. But that's entirely up to you. That's your work product that you have developed. Clearly the discovery is required to go back to the state. Okay, thank you. What do you want to do with Mr. Allen? The court, I can transport him back to the Department of Corrections. Mr. Rossi, do you want to make a record with this? I think it's appropriate that the court let him speak into the record his thoughts, unless the court just accepts that as a notice that those are his opinions. Well, you wouldn't lie to me about that, Mr. Rossi. I would not lie to you about anything. The court. So, of course, that's your representation. That what he would say if he were brought in here. I can't imagine the DOC being comfortable bringing him into my office. I would not be comfortable having him in my office. Ooh, wow. A lot of defendants go back into chambers all the time. That's wow. Oh, a little bias there, Judge. Anyway, Mr. Rossi, would the court also be inclined to mark and exhibit the prepared statement so that it is part of the record? The court, I have the record rolling. Mr. Rossi, okay. The court, yes. Mr. Baldwin, so we're going to leave, I guess, and you're going to, how is this? Just going to get up on the bench and say, the court, I will just indicate to Mr. McClellan's going to be in there with Mr. Luttrell, and I'll just say that we've had a turn of events and defense counsel withdrawing, and that's all I'm going to say. Mr. Baldwin, can you wait for us to get out of here? The court, of course. And we can have you, I don't know where you're parked. We have a hearing set for October 31st, and I'd like to keep it as a trial setting, an appointment of new counsel. And if you can get things together by that date to return to Mr. McClellan, that'd be good. Otherwise, if with your permission, I will give your successor counsel your contact information. Mr. Baldwin, okay. Mr. Rossi, okay. The court, where are you parked? Mr. Rossi, nice to meet you. Sorry to Mr. Luttrell, inaudible. Mr. Baldwin, just right out here in front of the building. I mean, there's a parking lot. There's a little parking spot right in front of the building. I don't know what. The court, everybody's in the courtroom, so I don't think there's anybody out in the hallways. Mr. Rossi, I'm going to go get my staff member. I'm going to have her. I don't need any. We'll rendezvous at some point and try to get the stuff back. Mr. McClellan, okay, that's fine. Between Steve and Sarah and I, Mr. Rossi, okay. McClellan, we'll get it all. Mr. Rossi, that's fine. Mr. McClellan, done. That's either Sarah. Thank you. The court, thank you. The proceeding concluded on October 19th, 2023 in the case of in camera. So let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, wow. Okay. Like I said, I've been doing this for 28 years. I have, first of all, never seen a case where a judge says, based upon the totality of the circumstances, that defense counsel is basically incompetent. Now, we have read the Franks hearing that was filed in this case, and it is voluminous. Quite voluminous. Okay. Unless they just made this all up, but it's pretty detailed. When we read their motion, I mean, they basically footnote everything, where they found it, what deposition it came from, because apparently in Indiana you can take depositions of witnesses, and they go through it very, very thoroughly. All right. And I didn't think that motion was incompetent at all. Now, if the court thinks that if your office mate is going to break into your office and take photographs that apparently have been out in the public for some time, that's something you take up with the Bar Association, but it's not something where you say, I'm done, right? Now, I'd have to go back and look. I'm not sure if it was Judge Gull or the previous judge that appointed Rossi and Baldwin on this particular case. But they both had very good reputations from everything that I can recall. They both practiced predominantly criminal defense. They've been doing it over 20 plus years. And to be called incompetent by a judge, I honestly can say I don't think I've ever seen that. I've never heard of a story where a judge pulled somebody in chambers and said, you're going to withdraw because you're an incompetent boob. Never, ever heard about that, seen that in my career. Now, have I seen some attorneys that I thought I wouldn't hire them to represent me on a speeding ticket? Yes. Have they been clueless of what was going on? Yes. But guess what? The defendant has a right to counsel of their choosing. Now, obviously, if it's private counsel, they can hire the most incompetent boob. They're a licensed attorney. They can go in there and they feel comfortable with them. There you go. You have a right to choose your counsel. When you have court-appointed counsel, you have the right to have an attorney at all stages of the proceedings. And if you can't afford one, obviously, and you qualify, they would appoint one. Obviously, Mr. Allen is in custody, so therefore he is entitled to counsel. I've never seen a situation where the court has removed court-appointed counsel. Not once. I've seen judges say to prosecutors and defense attorneys that somebody needs to file a grievance. I remember a case years and years ago. I showed up and I had a cooperating defendant in the case, very serious case. And remember, the district attorney walked up to me. He says, "Hey, Scott, man, what's going on? Your client, you let him talk to the defense?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" "Oh, your client gave a statement to the other attorney's investigators." And I'm like, "Well, that's total BS. They know my client is represented. It should not have taken place." And I knew one of the other attorneys is a good guy. We talked afterwards. He had just gotten on the case. He was there to kind of help a guy that maybe getting a little older in years, maybe shouldn't have been practicing. And I remember I went up to the other attorney that I knew. I was like, "What the hell, man?" He goes, "Man, I didn't know anything about it." Anyway, the judge was made aware of the situation, and he basically looked at me and says, "I'm sure somebody will file the appropriate, paperwork with the bar association," looking right at me. And I still remember the beginning statement. I truly am saddened that I must do this, but it's my ethical obligation to do that because attorneys really take it upon themselves to kind of police their own, so to speak. So I had to file, and it broke my heart because I knew the other guy, and he's like, but he was the most gracious about it. He was like, "Scott, you got to do the grievance, and you got to include me. I'm on the case. You got to do that." But that's how you do that. The court didn't say, "I'm going to kick you off because you violated an ethical rule." Didn't do that. And I've seen judges say that they were going to file grievances against prosecutors for not disclosing evidence that clearly should have been disclosed, that the prosecutor was made aware of, and knew that it should have been discovered. And so, I mean, I've seen that. But for a judge to call somebody in and say, "I think you're incompetent. We had a hearing and some of your factual allegations turned out not to be true." Oh, well, judge, welcome to litigation. How many times in a lawsuit does one party assert something and the other say, "That's not true"? And you have a hearing and a question of facts is determined as it relates to that. So that's bizarre to me. And the court basically saying, "I've read your motion," and basically she's in the process of denying it, even though she hadn't gone through all the discovery just yet. I mean, that's pretty crazy in and of itself. So, yeah, it's very, very interesting to me that Judge Gull conducted herself in this manner. I mean, I hate to say it, Mr. Rossi and Mr. Baldwin. I mean, I get you were ambushed. Totally ambushed. I've never seen anything like it. Not a one. And I think they're just like, "Hey, what do I do? I don't want to be publicly shamed and humiliated by the judge saying we're incompetent, and doing it in open court and just go away quietly." Now, obviously, Mr. Baldwin and Mr. Rossi have filed an extraordinary writ to the Indiana Supreme Court. And that's the case number 23S, original proceedings 311. Very rare circumstances, but the court did make the judge respond. And all of a sudden, this transcript is made available. Now, I know back in some places, there's lots of stuff done in chambers. I'm not a big fan of things in chambers, because if it was going to be done in chambers, the client, Mr. Allen, should have been present. He has a right to be present at all stages of the proceedings. This was obviously on the record. And the court was saying, "I'm going to fire your attorneys who I believe to be incompetent." Client, Mr. Allen, doesn't think they're incompetent. He likes them. He thinks they're zealously representing him and that they have a good theory of defense as it relates to trial. And then the court's like, "Well, I wouldn't even have him in here in my chambers. I wouldn't feel comfortable." Really? My God, I've done lots of, there used to be an old courthouse. They built, one of these new modern courthouses here in Denver. I hate it. You rarely go into chambers. And most of the time you go into the jury deliberation room if you have to talk to jurors in chambers during voir dire or something like that. But it's terrible. But the defendant's always there because it's a critical stage of the proceeding where they're entitled to be there. If we're going to do something, the defendant has a right to be there. And I had many defendants back in the old courthouse days where the defendant is brought in. He's seated there in the judge's conference room table in there, and we talk to jurors. We go over jury instructions. So for the judge to say, I wouldn't feel comfortable with Mr. Allen in my chambers. Oh my God. So the question then becomes, what will the Indiana Supreme Court do? And obviously, Mr. Rossi and Mr. Baldwin want to be on. Mr. Allen has been appointed new attorneys, so I don't know if he's bonded with them, if they're going to pursue the same defense, the, Odin, what do they call it? The Odinist cult actually killed Libby and Abby, and that's their theory. That's what they're going with. I mean, the judge may not like it. I mean, I kind of read from she thinks they're incompetent, but I mean, that's their defense. They got a reasonable inference to draw from the evidence that somebody else did it. And when you go through the factual statements of, I mean, their motion, I mean, it is 136 pages long on their Franks hearing. That wasn't just written overnight. A lot of time went into that. I mean, they tagged everything that they were backing up. And for the judge to be like, oh, I'm going to deny. I mean, the prosecution witnesses are clearly beyond reproach. Really, Judge? You're the one going to make that? I don't know. I think if I was on the Supreme Court, that I would remand the case for further proceedings in front of a different judge, removing Judge Gull. I would appoint independent counsel to Mr. Allen to advise him and say, hey, this court has an opinion that your attorneys are incompetent, but if you want them, that's your choice, okay? And don't come back down the road saying that they were ineffective or anything along those lines. You got your option. Who do you want to go with? The new set of attorneys or the old set of attorneys? You want to go to trial right away? I mean, for the court to ambush the client like this, and it's not just the attorneys that were ambushed, but ambush Mr. Allen basically saying, hey, I know you got a trial coming up in January, and we're just going to continue that. I think the defense attorneys in their proceedings are saying, hey, you implicate somebody's right to a speedy trial. He is going to get a speedy trial. He wants a speedy trial, and you're not allowing it. And frankly, the prosecution just brought somebody on to the case. This is a hearing back in October. You think that guy's going to be up to speed in 4 months on this case? No. So, I mean, here at Crime Talk, we like to talk about the facts, unbiased, fact-driven. But every now and then, hey, a little speculation, was maybe the prosecution not ready and they needed a continuance? Hey, let's get rid of these attorneys. They're putting up a hell of a defense. We didn't expect them to fight this hard. We expect them to roll over because everybody hates people that are accused of killing kids. Hope they'll get them to plead guilty. How dare you question anything that we have to do, in the prosecution side of it? How dare you question us? It's rather interesting. I'm not a big... This, ladies and gentlemen, is why I think things need to be done in public and on the record in court proceedings. Does this, what we just went through, the 27 pages of that transcript, does that instill trust and confidence in you of an unbiased judiciary in this particular case? Like I said, I don't think there's anything that Rossi and Baldwin did was incompetent. Maybe if they should have taken, better precautions with the discovery, but hell, every attorney has made mistakes. They've left a file in a courtroom. They go back and pick it up the next day. I've seen people do that. It's happened where your secretary will mail something out and they got all the discovery, and they include the wrong piece of discovery to a client. Something along those lines. You try to prevent that the best you can, but the reality of it is going to happen. And when you have an office mate you think that you can trust, you don't expect somebody that's a fellow attorney to go in there and grab discovery and sell it. I mean, you lock the cabinet doors if there's stuff in today's world, though. I mean, what if somebody hacked into a computer? I mean, come on. But even then, the appropriate remedy is through the grievance committee, not the attorneys themselves. And the court could have easily made that and, turn that over. The court then would be a potential witness to any type of a grievance. So she was kind of wanting her cake and eat it too. So I think the whole thing is messed up. I really do. There's probably some fault on the part of the defense for not, complying with the discovery better. We also have a situation where we have a judge who I think has totally messed this up. And it wouldn't surprise me if the Indiana Supreme Court boots her off this case. And I think we're going to have some sort of a hearing as to what Mr. Allen would like to do, because the whole due process thing, it's for real. And you may have violated Mr. Allen's speedy trial rights. And the new attorneys, should be filing something to that effect to preserve the issue on appeal. So big mess that has been created. Like I said, I've seen some people that I was like, oh, I think they're incompetent. But if that's who the attorney wants and that's who they can afford, that's who they get. I mean, I've seen judges that clearly did not like an attorney. Hell, I've had judges that didn't like me when we got going in court. Hell, I've had judges that acted like they hated my guts. But then when somebody in their family got arrested, were charged, who do they call? Me, right? So it's just one of those situations where you just don't. I think the judge messed this up big time. And what she may have done is potentially violated Mr. Allen's speedy trial rights, which would mean, well, potentially it means the case could be dismissed. Then the next thing is, let's say Indiana Supreme Court says, yeah, put Rossi and Baldwin back on. They're ready to go. You guys better hurry up and get that trial done. And, is the prosecution going to be ready? I think we saw that in Lori Vallow trial. They weren't really ready, were they? Yeah, they got a conviction, but were they really ready? I don't think they were. So anyway, that, ladies and gentlemen, is an example of why all that should have been done in public. And if the judge thought it was worthy of a public shaming or censuring of the attorneys, then that's what she should have done. Her attempt to give them the easy way out created bigger issues. I don't like it. Talk about interference with the attorney-client relationship and the attorney. I think the judge totally screwed this case up. So we will have to see over the next couple of weeks what the Indiana Supreme Court is going to do with this case. All right. So we may, have a little criticism for the Judge Gull there in Indiana, but as it relates to the judge in the Brian Kohberger matter, I think he did a fine job. I think he did a wonderful job. That's John C. Judge, District Court Judge, overseeing the Brian Kohberger matter. We talked about this a little bit at the beginning. I want to touch on it here real quickly before we go. We did a video on it yesterday, Monday. Gosh, it's been a long week for only Tuesday. And the judge made the right decision. The defense didn't win. The prosecution didn't win. We, the people, won. We're going to get to see the Kohberger case, and it's going to be streamed on the court's YouTube channel. And when I say we won, because think about it, both the prosecution and the defense did not want the cameras there. I don't like that. I think when the cameras are there, it's like anything. Shining light. It's the ultimate disinfectant for cleanliness. You do stuff in secret. I mean, I had a case once, a homicide case, years and years ago, and I got appointed to do the post-conviction relief because there was an issue that there was what they referred to as like a sub rosa agreement. Basically, one of the co-defendants was going to agree to testify, and there was an agreement that he would get a sentence reduction at some point. Well, the sentence reduction wasn't filed until after he had testified. The defense attorney that did the trial was not notified about it until the client found out about it when the family saw this guy out of prison. And like, what is he doing? Diddy bopping down the street? He should be in prison. So they look it up, and like 11 years later, 12 years later, they do this shady deal that nobody knew about. It was all done in chambers. It was done on the record, but in chambers. Unbelievable. And the defense attorney didn't have it. Don't you think the defense attorney would have liked, hey, man, you're going to basically get a free pass on this, and they're not going to tell anybody about it? Well, they have an obligation. But we did the motions. We did it. And, of course, they poo-pooed it. Oh, it's so, sure, it was done at a time. Sure, the court probably didn't have jurisdiction to do it. But, well, he's out now. Why do you want to cause trouble? Why are you causing trouble? And I think Mr. Rossi and Mr. Baldwin were perceived by the court as causing trouble. They were actually putting up a fight, and the court didn't like that. And I don't know. I don't like it. I think things need to be done in public. Okay? It's court. Things are going to be embarrassing. It's court. You got to go in the record, stated under oath, and it's in an open courtroom. Anybody can walk into the courtroom with very few exceptions. You can walk into any courtroom. Let's say there's something where somebody did something inappropriate to a child, and that child has to testify. Any one of us could go in there and walk in and do that. Listen. And you think, oh my God, this is terrible. I'm listening to a small child talk about her first sexual experience in front of a bunch of strangers in, jury box as well as people in the courtroom. But that's what we do in court. It's done in the public. It's not done in secret. And why Mr. Allen was not present when all this was taking place, beyond me. He has a right to be at every critical stage of the proceeding. And when the court is calling your attorney incompetent, I think that is a critical stage of the proceeding, and he should have been present. And I don't know whether this guy did it or not. We give everybody the presumption of innocence unless and until they plead guilty or are convicted by a jury of their peers. I really don't know. You read the defense motion. Well, if that's the theory they're going with, they got stuff to hang their hat on. And they're going to say, failed to investigate, and that the real people are still out there. The judge can shut them down, I guess, but the defense always has a right to present a defense, even no matter how ridiculous you think it may be. So, I think Judge Skoll screwed it up. District Court judge in the Koberger case got it right. He understands. Public needs to see what's going on. But while we're on the subject of secrecy, wouldn't you like to see the transcripts of all those in-chamber proceedings on the Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell matter that they said, it's so sensitive, we can't talk about it? Oh my gosh. Wouldn't you like to see it? Remember, the judge didn't want to make this public. The Indiana Supreme Court said, make it public. I think because it makes her look bad. I think she thought no one would ever see this transcript and it wouldn't matter. And I think that makes her look bad. All right, ladies and gentlemen, can you already imagine how quickly the evening has gone? I mean, we went through that transcript, but hey, like I said, when there's important documents like this, I can summarize it for you. You can look at a news article or something, and I don't think anything I've read about it clearly gives you the gist and the tone of the proceedings until you read the transcript, or at least until you have me read the transcript to you. But what do we say? We like facts. You can decide, I don't know. Some people may say, Scott, I think if the judge says these guys are incompetent, she must be protecting Mr. Allen's rights. So I don't know. Maybe you're wrong. Maybe I am. It's possible. I'm not going to deny that. The Indiana Supreme Court may completely agree with Judge Gull in this particular case. But at least you have the actual facts so that you can make the actual decision. There's so many people in today's world that think that you only get one side or one part of the story, and that's good enough. And if you don't like the official narrative on anything, how dare you? You must be canceled. Right? Like, what are you so afraid of? What is everyone so afraid of? Right? We want free speech. I mean, look at today's world. Like I've always used the example. We want to know who the crazies are. If somebody believes that the earth is flat, I want to know who that is. So I don't know. What if he comes to hire me for a job? Maybe he wants to do some construction on my house. Oh, really? You're a flat earther, huh? Okay. Maybe your sense of judgment is not so great, right? I want to know that. And that's what free speech does. If less people be exposed to good ideas, bad ideas, sometimes they're hurtful, they're hateful ideas, but at least you get to know who the people are that are making them. And you can decide, maybe I don't want to hang out with that person because they got some really bad feelings about other people. And that's not right. And wow, their true feelings have been exposed. I don't like them so much anymore. I don't think I want to invite them to my Christmas party because they're kind of mean. Yeah. So free speech is always a good thing. More free speech, the better. I know sometimes it's going to make people's feelings hurt. But hey, if some guy, in his free speech wants to get out there and say stupid stuff, it's oftentimes better for all of us to know who the stupid people are, ladies and gentlemen. Just something to think about. All right. Okay. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Allegedly canceled. That's right. That's right. The defense during court doesn't go into chambers, do they? The client. Well, normally, every time I've ever done anything in chambers, we've always done it with the client present. That's what I'm saying. You have a hearing where you're stating that the defense attorneys are incompetent. That client had better be right there. Unbelievable to me. Huge mistake. Huge mistake. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to continue the conversation, guess where we can do it? Well, if you're a Patreon member, you can get the link and we're going to have this conversation. We'll talk about what you want to talk about because it's your show, because our Patreon members run our show, and we'll give you the call-in number as well. So thanks for joining us on Crime Talk this evening. You know the drill. Subscribe if you haven't, like if you do, leave me a comment below and hit that little bell because the people that like to cancel people at YouTube, Facebook, all those places, yeah, they've totally taken us out of the algorithm because they gave us a content strike because we talked about things that they didn't think we should talk about. That guy named Jeff. That's right. So if you wouldn't mind hitting that little bell once again, that would be fabulous. Just your kind of way of sticking it to the man. That's what you need to do. Stick it to the man. The man being Google, Facebook. All right. Thanks for watching. We'll see all our Patreons in just a couple of minutes. Thanks for being here.